Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back, or welcome, everybody's new. So we're going to learn the parsha, Emor. And you're familiar with parsha, this week's parsha? The parsha of Emor is, the Emor means, it's an interesting word. Emor means to talk. But it's a commandment. It's Moshe Rabbeinu telling the Kohanim how they should behave. It's with the laws of purity. The Kohanim who serve in the Beis Hamikdash, they have to be careful about the laws of purity. It means not to go to a cemetery, not to get connected with dead bodies, and all those forms of, except for the relatives who, if a relative passes away. But this is the parsha for the Kohanim, about being pure. Now, let's read the pasuk. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. So Hashem talks to Moshe Rabbeinu as all the mitzvot. Hashem gives over the mitzvah to Moshe Rabbeinu to give over to the Jewish people. Emor el haKohanim b'nei Aaron. Now, pass on this mitzvah to the Kohanim. It's a mitzvah for the Kohanim. Command them. V'amarta aleihem, and tell them. L'nefesh lo yitamo ba'amov. Don't become impure. Don't get in contact with any dead bodies, with dead bodies. Stay away from that as much as possible to remain pure. So there are a lot of questions on this pasuk. First of all, we said the word Emor, we saw it 3 times. Hashem talks to Moshe Rabbeinu, tells him the mitzvahs. Okay, that's in every mitzvah you have that. But then Moshe Rabbeinu, Emor Amarta, it says it twice. Tell the Kohanim their mitzvah, the Amarta Aleim, and tell them. So it's repeating it twice. Why is it repeating it twice? And most of us are probably familiar. Most mitzvahs say Dibur, the Amar. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Daber el Bnei Yisrael, the Amarta Aleim. Do Dibur and do Amirah, which there makes more sense because it's 2 forms of talking. And we'll get to that, B'li Neder. What is the difference between Dibur and Amirah, which is very important with all the mitzvahs. All the mitzvahs in the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu teaches it twice, as a Dibur and as Amirah. Here it says Emor Amarta. They're both Amirah, and there's no Dibur for some reason, which we have to understand. Why is there no Dibur? And if there's Amirah, what does that mean? Twice Amirah. It's the same thing. What's the difference between the 2 Amirot? And then we'll have to understand the whole idea of Kohanim. Why do Kohanim? What is the whole idea of being pure, of purity, of also the idea of not coming in contact with death, with dead bodies? How does that affect the person, the neshama? How does it affect the Kohanim? And of course, what do we as non-Kohanim learn from that? How does it affect all of us? It's obviously a problem. The Kohanim were especially commanded about this, but we as non-Kohanim will learn from this. In general, what is the problem? What is wrong with this, and how it should change our lives, affect our behavior. Okay, so let's go step by step. Now, so the Sfas Emes opens up with the Medrash. It's the key to understand everything. The Medrash is bothered by the word Emor, the name of the parsha. Why all this Amirah? Why not Dibur? So he says like this. Starts off with the quote from Tehillim. He says like this. He says, Imrois Hashem Amoros Tohoros. The words of Hashem are words of purity. The words of Hashem are pure. The words of the Torah are pure. Imrot. This is Amirah. So what is the Medrash trying to answer with this pasuk? Well, what's the connection? So this is a beautiful parshat. So Dr. Sfas Emes. The Koshe, the Medrash was bothered with the question, and really the pasuk was bothered with that question. Ech yachol basar v'dam listaher karoi. How could a human being who's human, we're human beings, how could we be pure? We're not angels. Tahor. The Torah is commanding us to be pure. Pure means really pure. To be spiritual and pure, and not to be connected to any impurity, any of those flaws, which is something going beyond our human nature as human beings, as limited with bodies and desires and physical body. And the Torah is obviously commanding us to reach a higher level than we are, and especially the Kohanim. So, if it's such a high level, how do we do it? Or simply, how do we do it? Even Torah is telling us do it, but Torah is not telling us how to reach that level.
The question altogether assumes that the body is impure.
Yeah. First of all, assuming that living in this world is full of everything, purity and impurity. And obviously, if the Torah is commanding the Kohanim to be pure, obviously normal human beings are not necessarily pure. As we'll see, we'll go on to that. Well, we really have to define what level of purity are we talking about. There are tzaddikim who are totally pure, have no bad intentions, no bad thoughts, people don't even eat and drink. They can be like angels or totally pure. And then there are people who try to be on a certain level of purity, not to be really bad. Or there's some people who have ups and downs, So, but obviously the Torah is demanding us to be more pure than we are.
How does this connect with Kedoshim? With parshat Kedoshim, where it talks to be holy? Is there a difference between being holy?
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. See, here we're not talking about that. Here we're talking about a special level of the Kohanim, and obviously not just Kohanim, but all of us who want to be pure, and that's to reach that level that we're not at yet. Okay, so maybe we'll even touch that.
Is it fine? Is it pure?
Yeah.
Yes, the sign is not pure.
Because I thought part of the definition of Kedoshim was to separate yourself from things that are.
Okay, that's a whole discussion by itself. Maybe we'll get to that too. But let's see, one thing at a time. What is this purity? And if it's something so like we can't fool ourselves and pretend that we're pure. Yeah. And it has to be real. That's also very important. If the Torah is telling us to be pure, it has to be something real. In other cultures or religions, you can pretend to be pure. You can go into your house of worship and be pure, then walk out and not be pure. But here, this is Emes. This is real. And as we're going to see in the Sfas Emes, which is the real teaching of the Torah, the real way of the Torah, is to be pure in the business world, with the family, in this world, and that other religions can't do. We're commanded to be pure in this world with all these problems and tests and trials. So how do we do that? So when you're talking about Kedoshim, to separate oneself from the world, that is one path. But the Torah demands more from us, that even all of us who are here in this world, to reach some level of purity. Oh. So he says. So first he starts off with a beautiful idea. He says like this: Eich Yochol, how could we become so pure? Rak ki hakol b'maimar nivra. Says first of all we have to understand that everything in this world which doesn't seem so pure, everything out in the world, it was all created by Hashem. When you're here in this world, dealing with this world, it wasn't just created by Hashem, but he's adding now the word Amirah. We know that Hashem created the world with Ma'amar, Yehi Or, Yehi Rekia, the land, the plants, the people. Everything was created, Hashem created with Amirah, with the holy word of Hashem. It's all really Torah. It's all really Hashem's Ratzon. Ulachach Hama'amar noten tara lekol davar. So that means, what does that mean for us? It's a very important lesson. So that means the world really has potential to be pure. Everything you see in the world, the whole world, really potentially can be pure and can be really holy and pure. We don't have to negate the world or separate or run away from the world. Hashem created a world. Oh yeah, because Hashem created the actual world with Amirah, with Torah, then the world could be elevated and be pure. Oh, so this is beautiful. What the Sfas Emes is doing now, he's reading the pasuk. The pasuk has a double meaning. The simple meaning of the pasuk is Moshe Rabbeinu is commanding the Kohanim. You have to behave, you have to be perfect, you have to do all this. But then the deeper understanding of the pasuk that he's explaining to the Kohanim, he's helping him how to do it. It's not enough just to give Musar. Do this, don't do that, behave, be perfect, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. How can I succeed? Give me an eitzah how to do it. Think Emor. Moshe Rabbeinu is revealing to the Kohanim the secret how to do it. Because if you understand the power of speech, Emor, Ma'amar, which is the speech, all of our speech, and Amirah, the importance of the speech of Hashem, this, that the whole world is really connected to these deep teachings. The whole world is full of these deep teachings. The world is created with Amirot. Anything you look at, any flower you look at, any stone you look at, any person you look at, whether they seem to be pure, whether they don't seem to be pure, but they were created with an Amirah. That means when Hashem is telling us, do that and don't do that, and it seems hard to fulfill that in this world, so then we just have to understand, the same Amirah that says, be careful, be on this high level, that same Amirah is inside that world that's giving us a hard time in being pure. So if we're in a business, or we're in a family, or we're in somewhere with things aren't working, things are really, really hard, it's really hard to stay a mensch. It's really hard to stay pure. But all those things that are giving us a hard time, it's that same Emor. It's there. The mitzvah is there. He's saying all those things are really, they're part of the mitzvah. And all that high and holy and pure level in what the mitzvah represents is there deep in those things which don't seem to be so holy and pure. They don't seem to be like that, but if you look really carefully, if you really understand and look inside them, they really are. And I'll take that one step more. Even us, each one of us internally, we don't see ourselves as being capable of being on a higher level. We look at ourselves, we look at all of our midos. We don't like this person, we're jealous of that thing, we have this desire, we can't control ourselves, we can't control this problem, we can't control that problem. How do we become pure and start controlling all of our desires and all of our problems? So, Emor, you're really pure inside. You are pure. You don't know that. You don't think that. It doesn't seem that you're capable of being pure. So what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the Kohanim, what he's instructed by Hashem to tell the Kohanim, both teachings. Also, you have to be pure, and you have to be really always be higher and higher and better and better. And at the same time, Moshe Rabbeinu is giving the Kohanim this beautiful teaching that you are really pure. You were created by Hashem, and everything around you and everything you're connected with was also created with Hashem's holy utterances. Now, and another beautiful word connected to all of this, Rav Hirsch, he says in the parshat, he reads the pasuk like this. Hashem told Moshe, Emor el Kohanim b'nei Aaron. This is the introduction. Tell the Kohanim. What? What do you tell? The whole mitzvah. That's the parsha read. V'amarta aleihem, and tell them lenefesh lo yitama. Don't become tamei. Be tahor. But he reads it like this. It's beautiful. Emor el Kohanim b'nei Aaron. Period. Tell the Kohanim what? Listen to this. Doesn't say what to tell them. Right away, the pasuk says v'amarta. Then start telling them. What is the first amira? What is he telling them in the first pasuk? So like this. Emor el Kohanim. Period. Comma. B'nei Aaron. You are B'nei Aaron. Tell the Kohanim, you're the children of Aaron. You have a special schos. You have a special task. You're children of tzaddikim, which applies to all of us. All of B'nei Yisrael. We're B'nei Yisrael. So before all the mitzvahs, you read carefully the mitzvahs, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling two things. He's telling us, do this and don't do that, and keep this and don't give that. But the introduction to every mitzvah, the only way we'll be capable of doing the mitzvahs is Daber el B'nei Yisrael. Emor el Kohanim B'nei Aaron. Tell them, you are B'nei Aaron, you're special. You understand, appreciate what you are, that you're really special. And once you understand that, then you'll be able to do all these really, really lofty things. And that also explains what's special about Emor. We said we start off, what's the difference in Emor and Dibor? So our first says, Dibor is Vayidaber, talking, speech. But what if I talk to myself? What if I talk to 10 people, let's say I give a class, and they're all sleeping, or they don't understand one word I'm saying. So I was talking, and nobody understood. Nobody received anything. So that's called dibur. I spoke. Amira is more than that. If nobody hears what I'm saying, if I'm not talking with somebody, it's not amira. Vayomer is if I'm talking to you. If I'm talking to you and you are hearing what I'm saying, that's amira. Dibur is just my act of talking. Amira is talking to somebody. And that person really receiving and internalizing what I'm saying. So that fits into this whole word that Emor el Kohanim b'nei Aaron. We're not merely giving commandments. Do this and do that and do that. Without really understanding what you're capable of doing, what you really are. No. The first, it's all about Amira. First of all, Emor el Kohanim. You are part of this. When the mitzvot are given to Bnei Aaron, it's not merely a mitzvah. Moshe Rabbeinu isn't merely commanding them, do this and that. He's revealing to them, no, you are very pure. You can be this. It's not just do this, it's be this. That's what Amira is. You can understand this. You're really on this level of purity. And that applies to all of us. All of us, whatever level we seem to be on, we always strive to be more. Because it's really there. Okay, so let's go a little bit weiter. Okay, so now, so this is what the Sfas Emes comments, that Emor represents not merely a commandment that Hashem is telling us do this and do that, but it's really a revelation. Hashem is telling us that you are Kohanim, you are pure, and that goes back to the Mamarot, that everything in this world really has Hashem's beauty in it. And that's why we can fulfill the Torah. Oh, so now, the Sfas Emes didn't discuss yet the two Emors. We discussed it a little bit, but let's go on to see the two Emors. Why isn't it enough just one Emor? Zeu Emor v'amarta. Oh, so it says like this. Now, Shatara ba alidei bechinas ma'amar kanal. Now we're going to let's go focus more on Tara, on purity. So we didn't really understand what that is, purity. In general, being better, being better people, being better Yidden, that's what we're striving to. But now let's focus on Tahara, purity. What is this word purity? What do we really mean? You talked about Kedusha, being holy. Well, what are all these things? What's the attribute of purity? So he says like this: purity. That's the basic essence of creation. When the creation is pure, Maimer, that is Hashem's Amirah of creating the world. When we see the world as Hashem created it, then the world is a pure world. Now, and where do we see that in Amirah? What's the idea of Hashem creating the world with Amirah, with speech, and not with a hammer, or not with a bulldozer? What does it mean, Hashem creating the world with speech, with dibur? Amirah wa chibur va'dibuk b'shorosh achiyus. Speech, when we refer to it as Amirah, that's connected, chibur v'dibuk, with the root of chayus, of life. Which goes back to the whole idea of speech in general. Where do we see a person's life? We see in chayim, in speech, the koach of speech. We discussed that in Parshas Mitzorah when we talked about Lashon Hara, how your life force. Where do we see life the most? In speech, when you talk. There we see you as a human being. Bidiyuk. And that's where the neshama is revealed. Sfas Emes discussed there that you have a neshama inside of you. You have a body. We don't see the neshama. Cows and horses, they also have bodies. A human being is a body. There's a neshama. Inside of a human being, there's a neshama. We don't see it. The idea of speech is it getting out. What's inside of you getting out. And you can say Torah, you can say good, holy things, you can say Chas v'Shalom. A person abuses his speech, and he abuses that tremendous koach of speech. That's why speech is so important. Now, that's the neshama, the source of our life is speech. And as we read before from a verse, talking, dibur, is half of life, because it's yours speaking, but who's hearing you? Amirah is people talking to each other. When you said something, and that entered into the other person's ears and heart, they understood you, and you're talking to a person as a person. That's Amirah. Now, that's being connected to life. It's to life. People being connected and ultimately being connected to the source of all life, to Hashem's Amirah in creating the world. Now, okay, so now let's get back to the Amirah. What are these two levels of Amirah? Okay, now it's getting a little bit deep. Let's try to read what he says. He says like this. Now it takes us to Sfas Omer. That's important. Now we're counting the Omer. So it says like this. Ze inyan Sfas Emes. This is the Omer we're counting. What do we say in the Omer? Omer, we say before the counting, every night we say, Shetzivanu kadele taharenu. This makes us pure. Now, how does counting the Omer make us pure? What's the connection to purity? Ki b'yitzias Mitzrayim nizgale b'kol ish asher yochol latzeis mikol rotzon acher. Now, he's saying he's saying a pshat in purity. He says like this: what is Yitzias Mitzrayim about? We aren't slaves to Paro. We're free. Now, what does it mean to be free? So he says, now, Chayrus, he says, real freedom means that I'm free to serve Hashem. If I'm a slave to my desires, if I can't serve Hashem, if I can't do what I really want to do, what my neshama wants to do, what's really good for me, that means that I'm a slave. And to be free means ze chayrus, lios haratzon tamid libatel v'likalel b'shem yisborach. I don't have any other desires. As long as I have all these other desires, which are not the true ratzon of Hashem, what I really should be doing, then I'm not free. Now, v'zeh haya b'tzias Mitzrayim. When we left Egypt, we saw there were two freedoms. One, we were free from work, from physical work, but the real freedom was inside of us. Now that we left Egypt, now we were free to do what we wanted to do, to really serve Hashem, what our neshamas wanted to do. Shahaya geula al pines. Now he explains that's why it was necessary to be by anes. Leaving Egypt was miraculous. Hu bechinas bitul shelo b'derech haseichel v'ateva. This is called bitul. Now, we started off saying that what does it mean? What does freedom mean? We all have our desires. We all have our ratzon. I want this. I want that. That's me. I am what I want. Now, to not want all those things, to only want to do what Hashem wants, he says, in a way, that's called bitul. That's really not being what I am, which is a very important teaching. It's a very dangerous teaching, because then you could stop existing. So let's just wait till the end till he explains how it all works. But the first step is something called bitul. To be free means to be free from any of my ratzonot, which is a kind of a slavery. This is very interesting. He calls it being a slave to yourself. You're a slave. To be free means to be a slave not to yourself. But if I'm not a slave to myself, then I'm certainly not free. I'm certainly not myself. Oh, so that's called bitul. I'm a slave to Hashem, and that's beautiful. But that's still not the ultimate level, because you're not you. Oh, now, in Egypt, there was an instant geula in one night. Now, an instant geula, if you want to leave all of our desires and all of our problems and all of our bad midos and all these problems, so how do we do that? We have to do something called bitul, just to cancel all of that, to stop all of that, and in a way, stop being what we are, everything we were till now. But then we have to go back to ourselves. Achar kach Sfas Emes. Then we have to go through a slow geula, 49 days, step by step, a slow process of fixing ourselves. The first step was not really being ourselves. It's not really fixing ourselves. It's being mevatel ourselves, all the bad. Now, this first step was necessary to get to the second step. Now, in Sfas Emes, levarer hamidos shem dveikin b'nefesh ha'adam. Now, in the 49 days of Sfas Emes, step by step, slowly, we go through all of our own midos. I like this, I want that, I feel like this, I feel like that. These are our personal feelings. Some are good, some are bad, some are better, some are worse. They all could be used for good. There really is no such thing as bad. It depends how you use it, how you control it. So that's a slow process of controlling it and fixing it. how do you fix it? Lios nimshach chiyus Hashem yisborach besoch hamidos. Now this is a very high and deep level. The first level we said was Pesach. Just instantly leaving Egypt in 1 minute, which means leaving all of our bad desires and all of our problems. But because it's so fast, we don't have time to fix our midos. We just have to run away from them, in a way. To stop it all, and to just follow the pure Ratzon of Hashem and forget about our Ratzon. Now, the second step is the days of Omer, the 49 days of counting step by step, fixing another midah and another midah, but not to go back to be slaves to our midos. Once we became slaves of Hashem, once we know the truth, now we have to continue going with the truth, what Hashem wants, not just everything we feel like doing. But we have to put it all together. We have to show that what we want, all those desires we have, all those feelings we have to find a way that we're going to use it for Hashem's Ratzon, and really, what we want is really what Hashem wants, just we didn't really understand ourselves. Oh, Torah helps us. Oh, exactly. And until ultimately we receive the Torah, and that's how we can fulfill the Torah in this world, with all of our desires, with everybody in this world, with this world. But before we received the Torah, we just went out fast from Egypt because we couldn't stay there any longer. Oh, so that's why in the Avodas Hashem there's always two parts. There's that fast, quick, instant tikkun. Yeah, video. And that sometimes it's necessary just to save our lives. But then after we do that, then we have to work through it slowly and real. Oh.
So it's like a quick, so the first part is that it's like a quick fix that we just kind of need to save ourselves.
Once you can save, you can choose time to repair.
To
renew.
Yeah. The first part we said before is that you're really ceasing to be yourself for those few minutes because you can't. We're so bad. We can't function. We can't control ourselves.
Right.
We see we're losing control. So the first step is to be tool. Just don't give up all your ratzon.
So that was the first part when they first left.
200 years of being a slave. The Sfas Emes says it's the slavery we have to all of our bad midos. We are not in control. Most of what we do is not because we are not in control. We have bad desires. We have bad midos. We could be much, much better. So the first step is just okay, so stop. Leave Egypt. Run away from it. But it won't last because you are yourself. You have all of that inside of you. It only lasts for 1 day just to get this started. Now start learning the Torah. Start the tshuva process, a slow process. Ups and downs, and step by step. Now he adds, he says like this. This is already deeper Chasidus, Kabbalah. He says, Hashem Yisborach Ein Sof. Hashem is infinite. Ve'en lo midah ugvul. Hashem, as he's referring to, Hashem's light, and that good and that purity and holiness in the world is beyond anything in this world. It's totally perfect. It's totally pure. So that can't really fit in this world. It can't work in this world. So how do we do it? So he says like this: "V'hamshechus chiyus mimenu lanivraim," to bring down that life from Him, from Hashem, to the creations, to us creatures. Nikra midah. That's what we say midah. When we talk about midos, midos really means a midah in Hebrew means a vessel, a cup, a box. We want to take down all of that beauty, all of that lofty, pure, everything, to bring it down into a little box, into a little something that I can hold it in this world, a little piece of it. But not to lose that infinite quality. Not to chop it in two, because then it's just not Hashem anymore. It's just not. It'll be profane. We want to do this this really deep thing to take down that gewaltige life of Hashem, life force from Hashem, and to bring it down into this world, which is what Torah is really about. Now, so he says like this. V'zeh atzmo b'chinas emor v'amarta aleim. So that, now let's get back to the pasuk. All this whole teaching is all it really explains what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Kohanim and all of us, how to be pure, how to purify ourselves and stay pure. He's saying like this: Emor ve'amarta. There are two teachings going on here. What are the two teachings? So he says these are the two teachings: the teaching of Pesach and the teaching of Sfas Emes, the two types of tshuva. He says like this: Ma she'Hashem yisborach mekarev osanu elav. That it's really Hashem who's bringing us close to Him, and we're not really working on it. We're not putting all that avodah into it. And we can be part of that only by bitul l'klal Knesset Yisrael. And he also talks about bitul to Knesset Yisrael. It's not enough just to be batel to Hashem. It's really being batel to the Jewish people. Sometimes you have to be part of a tzibor. Sometimes, I want to serve Hashem this way and that way and do this and that, but it won't work on your own. You're not strong enough yet to be an individualist. Sometimes you have to be part of a yeshiva, part of a group, and follow the Torah of that group. Now, Zehu Emor. That's the first Emor. That's why it says, Emor ala Kohanim b'nei Aaron. All the Kohanim, first, they can't, express their own personal way of serving Hashem. First, they have to be part of the Kohanim. They have to be part of that group, that Hasidus, that yeshiva. And that's called bitul. You don't know how to serve Hashem yet. Go join a group of people who are more or less trying to serve Hashem and following the Torah.
Sorry, so when you're saying bitul, in my understanding, bitul is like nullification.
Yeah.
Is that how you
Well, he says practical. His range, the Sfas Emes does that a lot. He takes these deep, Hasidic ideas, but he says it really practically speaking. What do I do? Mia is about tshuva. What do I do? This is very interesting how he says it. He says it so clearly. The first step is to be part of the Kohanim. Before you write your own sefer and tell Bidiyuk, join a yeshiva. That's what he's saying. Be part of a group who are trying to follow the Torah.
That's considered bitul?
That's bitul. Because what about me? I have this feeling and that feeling and this idea. My world is a whole world of serving Hashem.
Bitul is by nullifying yourself. So you're part of
Shalom.
It's nullifying yourself, but to be part of it bigger.
He's talking. What the Sfas Emes is doing is being practical. He's talking on earth. These lofty concepts of bitul to Hashem. These are very lofty concepts, but tachlis, what he's saying is, join a group. Join a yeshiva. Video chaverim. Be part of a group.
So I don't know if I understand what the word bitul means in this context. That means just, literally the word means to nullify.
Yeah.
So it's saying that by being a part of like a kahila, whatever, a group of people, like a community, that we are essentially doing this bitul.
You're nullifying your gashmias, you're nullifying
and your ruchnias, your midos.
midos that might not be so great. You're joining a group that might strengthen you. That can give you,
You're giving up your individuality to some degree, so that you're saying, in a way, that I'm not ready to sort of be on my own. I need to be part of a collective.
which is very smart psychologically, because a man alone trying to find himself can be tempted very easily by so many things, stones in the path. So when they say al kasim machshal or lifnei aver, so it connects to that, so the stumbling block for a blind person, the temptations of the street. So it's easier to be, like you're a chain and a link, you're close, you're snug as a bug. with other people that can give you strength.
Yeah. This is really
You're floating
practical.
alone. Yes, right. Most people don't want to be part of a herd in a group. Most people want to do it their own way. But doing it your own way can lead astray. It's good. It rhymes.
It's interesting. There's a lot of Meforshim say that's the difference between sheep and cows. We know the Mazel of Pesach. The Bnei Yisachar says the Mazel of Pesach we know of Nisan, and the Korban Pesach are sheep, lambs, sheep.
Right.
Sivan, which is the Torah, was given in Sivan, shor, Mazal shor, a cow. So sheep all follow the herd. Cow, every bull is by itself.
The Jews went like lambs to slaughter, to Shoah, they use lambs. Sheep.
So these are the two opposites that we're trying to balance. We have to be both. So the first step though is to be a lamb. We have to be a part of Hashem's flock and follow it with emunah.
I mean, I'm also Kohen, but no, it's like, I've resisted dressing like,
Well, it's like joining the army. Sometimes you have to dress like everybody else, otherwise you won't have an army. But you don't just want the people of soldiers, and they won't be human beings. So you have to dress like yourself. So you have to know how to balance it. So he says like this. So he says the first Amira is Hashem, Moshe, telling the Kohanim, you be part of the Kohanim, which is a very high level. It's a very high community. Be part of that community, and Hashem blessed that community with that special koach, because you're all descendants of Aharon, or the Jewish people as a whole. We all have the avot. Be part of it. Before you start doing your own thing, first of all, you're all part of the avot. Like before we start our tefillah every day, we say the avot. It's the most important bracha. Before you say what you want and what you feel, the first step is avot. You're Bnei Aaron. You're Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. It's not you.
Right, know where you come from. And then you can figure out where you're going.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Now, the Amarta Aleihem, now the second Amira in the Pasuk, that's the second teaching. Then that's after we can go back and deal with all of our ideas and all of our feelings and all of our midos. I like this, I'm different, and I this and that. We can see Hashem's ratzon in all of that. It won't be I like this, I want that, I feel that. After we did the bittul, then we could deal with our own midos and our own feelings, but not as gaiva, not as me. We can receive Hashem's life force in our own life, and it won't be a contradiction.
Right, Ani is like Hashem and Netzach Yisrael. So you could take the Rashi Teva, like Adon Olam Netzach Yisrael. Ani.
Ani is a very, very important teaching. It means on the one hand it's something great. I have all these powers that Hashem gave me, and Hashem wants me to use them.
Ami. Part of lead, so you have to put it together.
It is what?
Lev, Li, and just a Lev Yisrael. You can have the Lev, that's the Lamed Bet, and then you have Hashem in the middle. So you can't have a heart without Hashem.
So this is, and he adds up the last three words, Umizeh Baha Tahara. And we'll only reach Tahara if we do both. And that goes back to what you talked about at the beginning. Now, to be holy, we can do great things, but who said it's going to last? Tahara, that even when we're not so holy, we're not doing holy things, we're not in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not Shabbos today. He discusses that. They're doing Shabbos on the weekdays. There are holy days and holy places, but the Sfas Emes says again and again, that's not what the Torah is about. Hashem doesn't need a holy people. He has angels. Hashem needs people, or even in this world, whether they're in the business world, or they're in their family, or they're in anything else, doing whatever they're doing in this world, just being with people, just enjoying themselves, to be pure. Even when you're not holy, but to be pure. And that's the dogma that the Kohanim have to serve for all of us. That as people, they can be pure. And they could be, and it's also very interesting. Sfas Emes also discusses this a lot. There are many forms of purity and impurity. We were discussing on a deeper level the midos and all your. The Torah just doesn't get into all these details. The Torah talks about the most physical form of impurity, being coming apart a dead body. Now, why does that make me a good person or a bad person? Whether I touch dead people or not. So the Sfas Emes hinted to it that the source of all purity is life, and the source of all impurity is death. If we really understand what it means to be alive, and that our life is really coming from the source of our life, it's coming from Hashem, coming from all that greatness that we were talking about, that what we really are, then by even seeing dead bodies, that'll hurt us. That'll make us feel that we're physical. We don't have that neshama. When we see dead bodies without a neshama, then we think we're just slaves to the physical world. We are not eternal. See death. See that person died. That animal died. Now, purity is all about life. Impurity is really all about death. Now. So by negating this world, by just being in the Beis HaMikdash all day, he says that's not purity. That might be holiness. But purity is that living a life with all of those feelings that Hashem gave us, and all those ideas that Hashem gave us, and using them and expressing them, but to purify them. To deal with them and to raise them, to elevate them. To show that they really have Hashem's infinite light inside of them. Not to just go after them and just, lower our behavior and just compromise. Chas v'shalom. Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching it. The Torah here is teaching us Emor v'amarta, that you could be on such a high level that you, what seems to be impossible, it seems to be impossible to have that midah and to control it. When I have that taiva, when I have that gaiva, and all these midos, the selfishness, all these problems, to go beyond that, to raise above it, to really care about other people. That seems impossible, because I'm I'm a human being, I care about myself. I could, if I, chas v'shalom, potentially, I could just be an animal, a slave to my body and my desires. But if I decide, I could be a person, an adam, and my body can be a slave to me. And that's really being alive, controlling my body, showing them that there's a real life inside of me, a real life, not a physical life, but a real life inside of me.
A shomer of someone who is met is on a very high level.
How do you see that? What do you mean?
Because it's close to having the neshama have an aliyah. It's a kesher between the Kohanim and Hashem. So it's someone who's given the chance to elevate it and a goof to becoming a neshama. So it's like the train station. It's like the person who's the purveyor of moving chesed. So that someone who's a shomer has this huyot on a very high level.
No, it's very, very deep. All these teachings, about life and death and all that. So when chas v'shalom something like that happens, so a person has to learn about that. When you see a body. Also, add to that, you only really appreciate something when you lose it. Yeah, we're all Baruch Hashem, we're all here and alive. Baruch Hashem, Ad Mei V'Esrim. Do we really appreciate what that means, that we woke up in the morning?
No, not until you lose someone you love.
So it's really interesting that the pasuk goes on. pasuk talks about sheira korav elav. So we're talking about relatives. The only people a kohen is allowed to touch dead bodies, he's allowed to, relatives, the 7 relatives: parents, children, brothers and sisters-in-law. Maybe that means that people who are close to us, when we see them, so that, on the contrary, that doesn't take us away from life. On the contrary, it can even bring closeness to life. It brings us closer to life. If we see a dead body, we don't feel connected to it, then we have disconnection from life. We're disconnected from our own life. All we see is death. We don't appreciate how alive we are, how great we are. But I guess maybe that's what the pasuk means, that when we see a karov, when we see family pass away, and we stand by them, that brings us closer to life. Oh. So this is all. So these all of these teachings. So with Hashem's help, we'll be able to use it now in the days of Sfas Emes, which is what these days are about. Preparing, working on ourselves to get towards Matan Torah, to reach that level. So this is all here. All these Torahs are here to help us do that. That we can really do that. What seems to be impossible, that's what we're here to do. We're here to do the impossible. We're not here to do what anybody else can do without the Torah. We're here to. These are special gifts. We have to appreciate them, and Hashem Himself will be able to attain Tahara. We'll be able to help others reach Tahara, to light up any darkness. We're not going to be afraid of any darkness or any trial, because we are. With Hashem's help, all of this will turn into good. All of the darkness, all in the world will turn into good. We'll receive that living Torah from Har Sinai, us and all of Am Yisrael. Shabbos.